Imagine stepping out of your home into a world blanketed in snow, not just a few inches, but towering drifts that stretch higher than your roof, the wind cutting through every layer of clothing like tiny knives, and temperatures that sink far below anything we think of as normal. Imagine rivers frozen solid, the landscape transformed into a silent white wilderness, and days so short that sunlight barely touches the frozen ground before slipping away again. Now imagine living in this environment without central heating, without electricity, without modern insulation, without cars to drive through the storm. Survival in such conditions is no longer just a matter of comfort. It becomes a question of life and death. This was the reality faced by Native Americans living in some of the harshest regions of North America, where winters could last for months and bring unimaginable challenges. And yet, despite these obstacles, countless generations of people not only survived, they thrived, adapting in ways that would later inspire architects, engineers, and survivalists around the world. The key to their survival lay not in waiting for the storms to pass, but in turning to the earth itself. Deep beneath the snow and ice they carved out homes, storage systems, and entire communities that were protected from the brutal winter. These underground systems were far more than simple shelters. They were masterpieces of engineering and adaptation, perfectly suited to the climate and resources of their environment. By studying these structures, we gain insight into a level of ingenuity and resilience that challenges modern assumptions about pre-industrial life. When we think of Native American housing, many images come to mind: teepees that dot the Great Plains, wigwams in the forests, and longhouses stretching across river valleys. These are the iconic structures often portrayed in history books and movies, but what is less commonly known is the extraordinary lengths to which these communities went to survive the bitter cold. For tribes living in northern regions, where snow covered the ground for much of the year and sub-zero temperatures could persist for months, above-ground housing was often insufficient. Teepees and wigwams, while quick to build and highly practical for mobility, provided little insulation against deep winter freezes. Wood and animal hides could only protect so much from the relentless wind and frost. In response to these challenges, Native Americans developed underground systems, pit houses, earth lodges, root cellars, and other subterranean spaces that made the winter not just bearable but livable. These homes harnessed the natural insulating properties of soil, creating stable temperatures even when the world above was a frozen wasteland. In many cases, these structures were surprisingly sophisticated, with ventilation systems to prevent smoke buildup, layered walls for added warmth, and layouts that promoted both social cohesion and safety. Consider the experience of a family in a pit house during a frigid January night. Outside, the wind howls through snow-laden trees, ice crystals forming in the air with each breath. The ground is frozen solid, and the daylight hours are so short that the family barely sees the sun. Inside, however, the temperature remains stable, maintained by the combination of earth insulation and a central hearth. Smoke rises through a carefully positioned vent, carrying away the fire's smoke without letting precious heat escape. The walls, constructed from a mixture of timber, bark, and packed earth, prevent the cold from seeping in. Around the hearth, family members share warmth, tell stories, and continue their daily routines in comfort. While modern readers might see this as a primitive or rudimentary solution, the reality is that these homes represent a deep understanding of physics, human physiology, and resource management. Every design choice, from the depth of the pit to the slope of the roof, was based on centuries of observation and trial and error, passed down through generations. Underground systems were not uniform. They varied widely depending on geography, climate, and available materials. In the northern plains and woodlands, pit houses often featured sunken floors and conical roofs, designed to shed snow and protect against the wind. In regions like the Southwest, where the winter was cold but the summers could be scorching, Earth lodges were built with thick walls that regulated temperature year-round, keeping interiors cool in the heat and warm in the frost. These variations demonstrate a remarkable adaptability, showing how Native Americans were able to tailor their homes to meet the specific demands of their environment. They were not passive observers of nature, they actively engaged with it, learning how to manipulate the landscape and its resources to ensure their survival. Food preservation was another crucial aspect of surviving winter, and underground systems played a critical role here as well. While the hearth provided warmth and light, storage pits and root cellars ensured that families had access to essential supplies when hunting and foraging were impossible. Corn, squash, beans, dried meats, and other staples were stored in cool, dry underground chambers, protected from the freezing temperatures above. This not only prevented spoilage, but also allowed communities to survive long stretches of scarcity without venturing into the deadly cold. In essence, these underground systems were not just homes, they were complete survival ecosystems, combining living space, food storage, and social organization into a single functional environment. The ingenuity behind these designs also reflects a deep respect for the natural world. Native Americans understood that the earth itself could be a tool for survival. By using soil as insulation, they minimized the need for excessive fuel for fires. By carefully choosing the locations of homes, on slopes, near water sources, or protected by natural windbreaks, they harnessed the landscape to their advantage. In a way, these structures represent one of the earliest forms of sustainable architecture, long before the term existed. They demonstrate that living in harmony with nature, rather than attempting to dominate it, was not only possible but highly effective. These underground systems also played an essential social role. Families and extended kin groups often lived together in clusters of pit houses or earth lodges, creating tight-knit communities that could pool resources and protect one another from the dangers of winter. The design of these homes facilitated communal living, with shared spaces for cooking, sleeping, and social activities. This reinforced cultural traditions, allowed for the passing down of knowledge, and strengthened the bonds that were essential for survival. Life in the winter months was not merely about enduring cold. It was about maintaining the social fabric that allowed communities to thrive through hardship. By looking at these underground systems, we also gain a new perspective on the intelligence and creativity of Native American societies. Too often, history has portrayed indigenous people as primitive or unsophisticated, a stereotype that could not be further from the truth. The very existence of these complex, functional, and highly efficient subterranean homes challenges these misconceptions. They are a testament to human ingenuity in the face of extreme environmental challenges, and they remind us that survival is not just about brute force or endurance. It is about observation, adaptation, and innovation. In this story, the winter is not just a backdrop, it is the central character, a formidable opponent that tests every aspect of human ingenuity. The underground homes of Native Americans represent a response to this challenge, a solution that is both practical and elegant. They are a fusion of science, art, and cultural tradition, demonstrating that survival in harsh conditions requires more than just physical strength. It demands intelligence, cooperation, and an intimate understanding of the world around you. So, as we begin our journey into the hidden world beneath the snow, imagine walking through a landscape that seems inhospitable at first glance. Feel the biting wind on your face, the snow crunching under your feet, and the sense of isolation that comes with the long, cold nights. Picture stepping into one of these underground homes. The warmth of the hearth embraces you, the smell of drying herbs and stored foods fills the air, and the laughter of family members echoes in the compact space. Outside, nature rages on, but inside, life continues. This is the genius of Native American underground systems, a blend of resilience, ingenuity, and an unparalleled understanding of survival. In the coming segments of this video, we will explore exactly how these homes were built, the variety of structures used across different regions, the methods employed to preserve food, and the cultural significance of these spaces. We will uncover the science behind their design, from insulation properties to ventilation, and reveal how these practices allowed entire communities to endure some of the harshest winters imaginable. But before we move forward, it's important to pause and reflect on the larger lesson here. Human beings are capable of incredible innovation when faced with adversity. The underground homes of Native Americans are not relics of the past. They are blueprints for resilience, creativity, and harmony with nature. Principles that remain just as relevant today as they were hundreds of years ago. This story begins with winter, but it is really a story about life itself, the determination to survive, to protect family and community, and to transform a seemingly impossible environment into a place of safety and continuity. It challenges us to reconsider our assumptions about ancient societies, and to recognize that sometimes the most remarkable innovations happen not above ground, but beneath it. For centuries, Native American tribes across the vast landscapes of North America lived under conditions that would challenge the limits of human endurance. The winters in many regions were not merely cold, they were relentless, unyielding forces that shaped daily life, dictated survival strategies, and demanded a profound understanding of the natural world. The snow could pile high enough to bury shrubs and small trees, and temperatures often dropped so far below zero that exposed skin risked frostbite within minutes. Rivers and lakes froze solid, cutting off one of the most crucial sources of transportation, food, and trade. Wildlife that had been abundant during warmer months either migrated to milder climates or burrowed into hibernation, leaving communities dependent on the food they had prepared and preserved during the warmer seasons. For these tribes, winter was not simply a season. It was a test of resilience, ingenuity, and the ability to coexist with nature in its harshest form. The landscape itself posed formidable challenges. The open plains of the north could become a blinding sea of white, where orientation was nearly impossible, and the wind blew with such ferocity that it could strip warmth from clothing and skin in a matter of moments. In the dense forests of the northeast, the cold was accompanied by heavy snow that weighed down tree branches, creating the constant danger of falling limbs and blocking critical travel paths. Even in the southwest, where winters were less severe, the temperature could plunge unexpectedly at night, and the high desert winds cut across the land with sharp, icy precision. Survival in these conditions required more than skill in hunting or gathering. It required foresight, planning, and the ability to manipulate the environment to one's advantage. For Native Americans, the first step in overcoming winter was understanding the environment in meticulous detail. They observed the behavior of animals, noting which species would remain active, where they would hide, and how their patterns could indicate the availability of food. They studied the terrain, identifying natural windbreaks, slopes that collected sunlight, and areas that were prone to flooding or avalanches. They tracked the changing seasons with precision, understanding that timing was critical. If hunting, harvesting, and storage preparations were delayed by even a few weeks, the consequences could be catastrophic. Communities developed intricate systems of calendars, often tied to lunar cycles and natural phenomena, to ensure that every action, from planting crops to hunting game, occurred at the optimal time for survival. The most immediate and pressing challenge was shelter. The above-ground structures common during the warmer months, such as teepees, wigwams, and even longhouses, offered little protection against the extremes of winter. While they could shield occupants from rain or moderate wind, they were vulnerable to heavy snow, sub-zero temperatures, and the prolonged lack of sunlight that characterized northern winters. Without adequate insulation, fires burned through precious fuel and warmth was fleeting. This necessity drove innovation, compelling Native Americans to rethink the way they constructed homes and to turn toward the earth itself as a solution. The ground, with its natural insulating properties, provided a stable and consistent temperature that could dramatically improve comfort and survival odds. By digging below the surface, tribes created shelters that not only conserved heat but also protected against the fiercest elements. Food scarcity was another central concern. In the summer and autumn, communities relied on hunting, gathering, and agriculture to build reserves for the harsh months ahead. Corn, beans, squash, dried meats, nuts, and berries were meticulously prepared and stored, often in underground pits or root cellars. Fish caught from rivers and lakes were smoked or dried to last for months. Even with careful preparation, the winter demanded rationing, careful planning, and an intimate understanding of which foods could last and which needed to be consumed first. The underground storage systems were crucial for this strategy, keeping supplies safe from freezing temperatures, pests, and spoilage. These systems were often just as sophisticated as the homes themselves, carefully designed to maintain the correct temperature and humidity levels, demonstrating a remarkable understanding of preservation techniques long before modern science explained why they worked. Social dynamics also played a critical role in surviving winter. The cold and scarcity necessitated cooperation, and communal living became a survival strategy as essential as food or shelter. Families and extended kin groups often shared underground homes, pooling resources and labor to ensure everyone had what they needed. Tasks were divided efficiently. Some members maintained fires and ventilation, others prepared and stored food, while elders and experienced hunters advised on best practices based on decades of accumulated knowledge. Children were taught survival skills from a young age, learning how to identify edible plants under snow, navigate frozen rivers, and contribute to communal living. This was not simply a way of life. It was a sophisticated system of social organization designed to ensure the survival of the group rather than just the individual. The climate itself was unpredictable, adding another layer of complexity. A sudden blizzard could immobilize an entire community, forcing them to rely on the safety and warmth of their underground homes. A mild winter might lead to early thawing, affecting the stability of stored foods and making travel hazardous due to mud and flooding. Tribes adapted by creating flexible strategies that could accommodate these shifts. For example, they developed multiple storage locations, sometimes hidden and sometimes communal, to ensure that no single failure could spell disaster. They maintained emergency supplies, shared knowledge of alternative hunting or foraging grounds, and coordinated communal efforts to reinforce shelters before storms hit. Beyond survival, winter also influenced culture, ceremony, and spiritual practice. Many tribes viewed the harsh season with a combination of reverence and respect, understanding that survival was not guaranteed and that the natural world had to be approached with humility. Rituals, songs, and stories often centered around winter themes, teaching lessons about resilience, cooperation, and the importance of preparation. Underground homes themselves became sites of cultural activity, where stories were shared, traditions passed down, and social bonds strengthened. These spaces were more than just shelters. They were the heart of the community during months when the outside world was inhospitable and dangerous. The technological and architectural innovations born from winter survival are particularly remarkable. Pit houses, earth lodges, and other underground structures were not simple holes in the ground. They were carefully engineered spaces designed to maximize insulation, ventilation, and comfort. The depth of a pit house could regulate temperature, keeping it warm in winter and cool in summer. Roofs were often angled to prevent snow accumulation, and layers of earth, bark, and timber provided additional insulation. Ventilation shafts allowed smoke to escape while preventing heat loss, and interior layouts facilitated both communal living and privacy. In some regions, multiple homes were connected by underground passageways, allowing families to move between spaces without exposure to the cold. These innovations demonstrate a sophisticated understanding of physics, biology, and environmental science, all applied centuries before formal studies in these fields existed. Even the choice of location for these underground systems reflected strategic thinking. Homes were often built on slopes to take advantage of sunlight, near water sources for easy access, and in areas sheltered from the prevailing wind. The landscape itself was a tool carefully analyzed and utilized to increase survival odds. Communities selected sites that minimized risk from natural hazards such as avalanches, flooding, or predator activity. The construction process was a collective effort, often requiring weeks of preparation, with materials gathered from the surrounding environment and labor shared among families. This not only ensured structural integrity, but also reinforced social cohesion, creating a sense of shared responsibility and accomplishment. Winter survival was also a matter of knowledge transmission. Elders were highly valued for their experience and expertise, and they played a critical role in guiding younger generations. Lessons about when to plant, hunt, or harvest, how to construct and maintain underground homes, and how to store and ration food were passed down through oral traditions. This continuous chain of knowledge ensured that each generation was equipped to handle the harsh conditions and adapt to any new challenges that arose. In many ways, winter shaped not only the physical landscape but also the intellectual and cultural landscape of Native American societies. The psychological aspects of enduring winter were equally significant. Months of limited daylight, cold temperatures, and isolation could strain mental health and social bonds. Underground homes mitigated some of these challenges by providing warm, communal spaces where families could gather, tell stories, and engage in cultural activities. These spaces fostered a sense of security and normalcy, helping to maintain morale and cohesion during the long, harsh months. The very act of building and maintaining these structures became a source of purpose, a tangible way for communities to assert control over an environment that could otherwise seem overwhelming and indifferent. In essence, the challenge of winter demanded an integrated approach that combined architecture, resource management, social organization, cultural practices, and psychological resilience. Native American communities were not merely reacting to the cold, they were proactively shaping their environment and their lifestyles to ensure survival. This required foresight, planning, and a deep understanding of natural systems. The solutions they developed, underground homes, storage pits, communal living arrangements, represent some of the most impressive examples of human adaptation to extreme environmental conditions. By studying these practices today, we gain insight not only into the daily lives of these communities, but also into broader principles of sustainability, ingenuity, and human resilience. The winter landscape that posed such a formidable challenge forced Native Americans to innovate in ways that were efficient, sustainable, and harmonized with their environment. Every snowstorm, every icy wind, and every frozen river became an opportunity to refine techniques, improve designs, and strengthen social bonds. These lessons resonate even in modern times, reminding us that survival is not simply about enduring hardship. It is about understanding, adapting to, and working with the forces around us. Winter, with all its challenges, shaped Native American life in profound ways. It dictated when and how communities built their homes, stored their food, maintained their social structures, and transmitted knowledge across generations. It was a force that demanded respect, ingenuity, and cooperation. And through it all, Native Americans responded not with fear or despair, but with creativity, resilience, and a deep connection to the land. Their underground homes, storage systems, and communal strategies stand as enduring testaments to the power of adaptation and the brilliance of human problem-solving in the face of extreme adversity. As the harsh winter descended across the lands inhabited by Native American tribes, survival depended on ingenuity, planning, and an intimate understanding of the environment. The challenge was immense. Cold winds that cut through clothing like blades, snowdrifts that swallowed up paths and landmarks, and temperatures that could drop far below freezing for weeks at a time. Faced with such conditions, tribes across North America developed underground systems that allowed them to endure months of freezing weather. These were not simple holes in the ground or temporary shelters. They were carefully designed, highly functional structures that combined warmth, protection, storage, and communal living. The variety of these underground systems reflects both the diversity of the landscapes Native Americans inhabited and their extraordinary adaptability. One of the most sophisticated forms of underground housing was the earth lodge, a structure commonly associated with the tribes of the Great Plains, including the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara peoples. These lodges were large, dome-shaped constructions, typically several meters in diameter, capable of housing multiple families or extended kin groups. The core of an earth lodge was a robust wooden framework made from thick posts and beams, arranged in a circular pattern. This frame provided the structural strength to support the heavy layer of earth that would cover it, sometimes several feet thick. The earth itself was the secret to the lodge's warmth and insulation. Soil naturally resists temperature fluctuations, keeping interiors significantly warmer than the frigid air above. In the heart of winter, when the snow piled high and the wind screamed across the plains, the interior of an earth lodge could remain comfortably warm with only a small central fire. Inside the earth lodge, a central hearth served multiple purposes. It provided warmth, a place to cook food, and a gathering space for families to socialize, tell stories, and conduct ceremonies. Smoke from the fire was carefully channeled through a vent at the top of the dome, allowing it to escape without draining the lodge of precious heat. The interior walls were sometimes lined with mats or animal hides for additional insulation, and sleeping areas were arranged around the periphery to take advantage of the warmth from the fire. The design was highly efficient. It minimized heat loss, maximized usable space, and allowed for communal living while maintaining a degree of privacy. The earth lodge was more than a home. It was a hub of social, cultural, and spiritual life, demonstrating how architecture and community were deeply intertwined. In contrast to the large communal earth lodges, pit houses were smaller, sunken structures often used by tribes in northern and western regions, including the Aleut, Inuit, and various plateau peoples. Pit houses were typically dug directly into the ground, with floors several feet below the surface. The walls were reinforced with timber, stones, or a combination of materials, and the roofs were usually constructed from a combination of wood, bark, and earth. The sunken design provided excellent insulation. The earth around the pit house absorbed heat from the sun during the day and retained warmth at night, keeping temperatures relatively stable even when blizzards raged above. Pit houses were highly versatile. They could serve as permanent residences or seasonal shelters, depending on the tribe's migratory patterns and the availability of resources. Inside, a central fire provided warmth, while smoke was vented through a small hole in the roof or an external chimney. The interior layout was often multifunctional, with areas for cooking, sleeping, and storage. Families could live in tight quarters, sharing warmth and resources, which was essential for survival in regions where winters could be extreme and prolonged. The compact design of pit houses also made them easier to maintain, allowing communities to spend more time focusing on hunting, gathering, and preserving food rather than constant construction. Beyond living quarters, Native Americans developed underground storage systems that were equally ingenious. Root cellars, storage pits, and cache pits were crucial for maintaining food supplies throughout the winter. These subterranean chambers were designed to maintain stable temperatures, typically just above freezing, and low humidity, which prevented spoilage while preserving essential nutrients. Corn, squash, beans, dried meat, fish, nuts, and berries were commonly stored in these spaces, often in combination with insulating materials like straw, grasses, or bark. By storing food underground, tribes could protect it from both the cold above ground and from pests that might otherwise destroy supplies. Root cellars were particularly common among agricultural tribes, such as those in the Northeast and Midwest. These chambers were dug into hillsides or beneath homes and could be quite large, sometimes capable of storing enough food to sustain an entire extended family for months. They were meticulously constructed. The walls were reinforced to prevent collapse. Ventilation shafts were added to reduce moisture buildup, and drainage systems were sometimes implemented to prevent flooding from melting snow. The level of sophistication in these designs reflects a deep understanding of both engineering principles and the needs of daily life during harsh winters. In addition to food storage and living spaces, some tribes developed underground passageways and connected structures. In certain villages, multiple pit houses or earth lodges were connected by narrow tunnels, allowing individuals to move between homes without exposure to the elements. This was especially valuable during severe storms, when even brief exposure to freezing winds could be dangerous. These passageways also facilitated communication and communal activities, creating a sense of cohesion and safety within the village. The tunnels were often carefully concealed from view, both to protect inhabitants from predators and to maintain privacy. Construction techniques for these underground systems varied depending on local resources. In forested regions, timber and bark were abundant, providing the necessary materials for roofing and wall reinforcement. In the plains, where trees were less common, communities relied more heavily on sod, packed earth, and stones. The earth itself was not just an insulating material, it was structural, forming the very walls and roof of many lodges. These materials were chosen for their durability, availability, and ability to regulate temperature. The ingenuity lay not just in the use of resources, but in how they were combined to create structures that were both functional and long-lasting. Ventilation was another critical component of underground systems. Without proper airflow, smoke from fires could accumulate, creating dangerous conditions. Native Americans developed simple yet effective ventilation systems, using chimneys, vents, and strategic openings in the roof or walls to channel smoke out while minimizing heat loss. The placement and size of these vents were carefully calculated, often based on observation and experimentation over generations. Proper ventilation not only ensured safety, but also improved air quality, making the underground spaces more comfortable and livable for extended periods. The interior design of these spaces was often multifunctional. In addition to sleeping and cooking areas, underground homes frequently included spaces for storing tools, weaving materials, and other essential items. Some lodges featured designated areas for ceremonial activities, emphasizing the integration of cultural life into daily survival practices. By combining functionality, comfort, and social structure, these homes reflected a sophisticated understanding of human needs and environmental adaptation. It's also important to recognize that these underground systems were not isolated innovations. They existed within a broader network of survival strategies. Communities carefully planned the location of their homes in relation to hunting grounds, water sources, and agricultural fields. Pathways between structures were maintained and cleared of snow, and lookout points were often established to monitor approaching weather or wildlife. Food preparation and storage, fire management, and communal responsibilities were all coordinated with the architectural design of the lodges and pit houses. This holistic approach demonstrates that underground structures were part of a complex system of survival, rather than standalone solutions. The cultural and spiritual significance of these underground systems cannot be overstated. Many tribes viewed the earth as sacred, and living beneath the surface was not merely a practical choice, it was also a spiritual one. Being surrounded by the earth provided a sense of protection, connection, and continuity with the natural world. Ceremonies and storytelling often took place within these spaces, reinforcing communal bonds and passing down knowledge essential for survival. The very act of building and inhabiting an underground structure was intertwined with cultural identity and reverence for the land. In some regions, underground structures were incredibly elaborate. Archaeological evidence has revealed pit houses with multiple rooms, storage niches, built-in benches, and sophisticated hearths. Some earth lodges were so large that they could host entire community gatherings, acting as both homes and centers for social and political activity. These findings underscore the creativity and technical skill involved in designing spaces that were not only functional but also conducive to community life and cultural expression. Even though these systems were adapted to cold climates, similar principles were applied in other environments. For example, in arid regions, underground homes provided cool interiors during hot summers while still offering protection during cooler winter nights. The use of earth for insulation, temperature regulation, and structural support was a versatile solution that could be tailored to diverse climatic conditions, demonstrating the universality and ingenuity of these designs. The legacy of these underground systems is profound. They challenge misconceptions about pre-industrial societies, demonstrating that survival in extreme conditions requires not just endurance, but intelligence, observation, and innovation. They provide valuable lessons for modern architecture, engineering, and sustainable design. By using natural materials and leveraging the insulating properties of the earth, Native Americans created homes that were energy efficient, durable, and in harmony with the environment, a blueprint that remains relevant in today's world. In essence, the variety of underground systems, from large communal earth lodges to intimate pit houses, from root cellars to connecting tunnels, represents a remarkable synthesis of practical engineering, environmental adaptation, social organization, and cultural expression. Each structure was a response to a specific challenge shaped by geography, climate, and available resources, yet all shared a common goal: to survive, thrive, and maintain community in the face of winter's formidable power. Through careful observation, experimentation, and cultural transmission, Native Americans developed an array of subterranean solutions that ensured warmth, safety, and sustenance during the coldest months. These structures are a testament to human ingenuity, resilience, and the capacity to live in harmony with nature, even under the harshest conditions. By examining them today, we gain not only historical insight, but also inspiration for sustainable living, architectural innovation, and the enduring power of adaptation. To understand how Native American underground systems function so effectively, we must first appreciate the interplay between human ingenuity and the natural environment. These were not accidental shelters, nor were they crude holes in the ground. Every element, from the depth of a pit house to the angle of a lodge roof, from the placement of a hearth to the ventilation system, was carefully considered to maximize survival and comfort. The people who designed these structures had an intimate knowledge of the Earth's insulating properties, of airflow, and of how to manipulate natural materials to create spaces that were both safe and livable, even in the harshest winter conditions. At the heart of the effectiveness of these underground systems was a fundamental principle: earth as an insulator. Soil, particularly when compacted and layered with other natural materials such as sod, clay, or gravel, resists rapid changes in temperature. In winter, the ground beneath the surface remains relatively stable compared to the freezing air above. By sinking living spaces into the earth or covering structures with packed soil, Native Americans could maintain interior temperatures significantly higher than the frigid air outside, Even during blizzards or extreme cold snaps, the temperature inside a well-constructed pit house or earth lodge could remain comfortable, often near or above freezing, with just a small fire supplementing the warmth. This was critical in a time before modern heating systems, as even a minor fluctuation in indoor temperature could mean the difference between life and death during winter. The architecture of these underground systems was tailored to make the most of this natural insulation. In pit houses, for example, the depth of the structure was carefully calculated. A shallow depression would provide some protection, but might still allow cold air to penetrate, while a too deep excavation could make construction difficult and reduce airflow. The ideal depth allowed the ground to buffer temperature extremes, while keeping the interior accessible and comfortable. The floors were often lined with layers of grasses, mats, or animal skins to provide additional insulation and comfort, further enhancing the temperature stability. The walls, reinforced with timber or stone, provided both structural support and additional thermal mass, absorbing heat during the day and slowly releasing it at night. The design of roofs was another critical factor in maintaining warmth. Earth lodges typically featured a gently sloping or domed roof, capable of supporting the heavy weight of packed soil while also shedding snow and preventing collapse. The roof's shape and thickness were optimized to trap warm air inside while keeping cold air out. In pit houses, the roof might be a combination of timber, bark, and earth, carefully layered to prevent drafts and maintain consistent warmth. Some tribes even added insulating layers of moss or grasses, filling gaps and cracks to prevent cold air from seeping in. Every layer had a purpose: structural stability, insulation, or both. Central to the function of these underground systems was the hearth, often located in the middle of the structure. The hearth provided heat for the entire living space and was carefully positioned to maximize warmth distribution. Fires were typically small, controlled, and maintained continuously, providing enough heat to keep the interior comfortable without consuming excessive amounts of fuel. Wood, dried grasses, and other natural combustibles were chosen for their efficiency and long burn time. Smoke from the fire was vented through carefully designed openings in the roof or walls, ensuring the air remained breathable. Ventilation was an art in itself. Too little venting would allow smoke to accumulate, creating dangerous conditions, while too much venting would allow heat to escape. The placement and size of these vents were often determined through generations of observation and trial and error, demonstrating a practical understanding of thermodynamics long before the concept was formally described. Ventilation served another purpose beyond smoke management. Fresh air was necessary for both health and comfort, and airflow had to be balanced to prevent heat loss. In many pit houses and earth lodges, vents were positioned to take advantage of prevailing winds, drawing in fresh air from one side while allowing smoke to escape from another. Some communities use small channels or shafts built into the walls to circulate air, maintaining a stable oxygen level and reducing humidity. This careful management of airflow was crucial, as damp, stagnant air could exacerbate the cold and create unhealthy living conditions. Another remarkable aspect of these systems was the integration of food storage and daily living functions. Unlike modern homes, where the kitchen, bedroom, and storage areas are separate, underground systems often combined multiple functions into a compact, efficient space. Root cellars and storage pits were sometimes located directly beneath or adjacent to living quarters, allowing easy access to food without venturing into the cold. Corn, squash, beans, nuts, and dried meats were stored in these chambers, insulated further with layers of grasses or bark. The earth itself kept the stored foods from freezing solid or spoiling, maintaining them in an ideal state for months at a time. In this way, survival, architecture, and food management were all intertwined, each element supporting the other. The layout of interior spaces was often strategically designed for both warmth and social interaction. Sleeping areas were typically placed close to the hearth or against walls where heat accumulated. Floors were sometimes raised in certain areas to create platforms that retained warmth from body heat and fire. Workspaces, such as areas for crafting tools, weaving, or food preparation, were located to maximize efficiency while remaining sheltered from drafts. The compact design allowed families to share body heat, enhancing warmth during the coldest nights. In larger earth lodges, communal areas were designed to accommodate multiple families, fostering social bonds and shared responsibility for survival tasks. Many underground homes also included hidden or protected entrances. This served multiple purposes, keeping out the cold wind, protecting inhabitants from predators, and providing a measure of security against other human threats. Entrances were often narrow and low, sometimes requiring occupants to stoop or crawl, which minimized heat loss and created a thermal barrier. Some lodges had secondary exits or tunnels, providing escape routes in case of fire or other emergencies. These architectural features show a deep understanding of both environmental hazards and personal safety, highlighting the complexity of the design. The interaction between fire, ventilation, and insulation illustrates the sophisticated engineering behind these homes. Heat from the hearth radiated throughout the interior, absorbed by walls, floors, and roof layers. The packed earth acted as a thermal mass, storing heat during the day and releasing it slowly at night. Ventilation shafts allowed for controlled airflow, ensuring smoke and excess moisture were removed while retaining warmth. Every element worked together in a delicate balance, demonstrating an intuitive grasp of principles that modern engineers would later formalize in heating and insulation science. In addition to temperature control, underground systems provided protection against wind, snow, and storms. Above-ground structures are vulnerable to accumulation of snow and exposure to wind, which can quickly sap heat and damage walls or roofs. In contrast, sunken homes and earth-covered lodges were shielded by the very landscape itself. The surrounding earth acted as a natural windbreak, reducing drafts and preventing snow from building up directly on the roof. Even during blizzards that forced travel to a halt, the interior of these underground homes remained calm, warm, and safe, a sanctuary amidst the storm. The efficiency of these systems extended to resource management. By reducing the need for large fires and excessive fuel consumption, Native Americans conserved valuable wood and other combustibles. The earth itself provided insulation that would otherwise require additional materials or energy to achieve. This sustainable approach ensured that communities could endure long winters without depleting their surrounding environment, highlighting a harmonious relationship between architecture and ecology. Social and cultural factors also influenced the design of these underground systems. For example, communal earth lodges allowed families to coordinate tasks such as fire tending, food preparation, and childcare. By living in close quarters, they shared warmth and labor, strengthening social bonds that were critical for survival. In addition, the hearth and interior spaces became centers for storytelling, ceremonial activities, and knowledge transfer, embedding cultural continuity within the very structure of the home. In this way, the underground systems were not merely functional, they were integral to the social and spiritual life of the community. The adaptability of these systems is another remarkable feature. Variations in depth, size, construction materials, and layout reflect responses to local climate, terrain, and available resources. In forested regions, timber was abundant, allowing for more intricate frameworks. In open plains, earth and sod were more readily available, providing durable insulation and structural support. Even the orientation of entrances, hearths, and ventilation shafts was carefully considered to maximize sunlight exposure, protect against prevailing winds, and maintain optimal airflow. These adaptations demonstrate that Native American underground systems were not one-size-fits-all solutions, but were tailored to the unique challenges of each environment. Finally, the legacy of these underground systems extends beyond survival. They reveal a sophisticated understanding of environmental engineering, energy efficiency, and human comfort long before formal scientific study of these principles existed. By observing and working with the natural properties of earth, air, and fire, Native Americans created homes that were comfortable, safe, and sustainable. These structures stand as enduring testaments to human ingenuity, demonstrating how knowledge of materials, climate, and communal living can be applied to create resilient, functional, and culturally meaningful spaces. In essence, the effectiveness of these underground systems rested on a deep understanding of thermodynamics, insulation, ventilation, and spatial design, all integrated into a cohesive whole. Each component, walls, roofs, hearths, vents, floors, and storage pits, worked together to create an environment that allowed communities to survive and thrive through the coldest months. By blending practical engineering with cultural practices, Native Americans developed solutions that were as elegant as they were effective, proving that human ingenuity, observation, and adaptation can overcome even the harshest natural challenges. The underground homes and structures of Native American communities were not merely functional solutions to survive harsh winters. They were deeply intertwined with culture, identity, and social organization. While their primary purpose was to provide warmth, protection, and storage for essential resources, these spaces also became centers for family life, storytelling, ritual, and the transmission of knowledge. Understanding the cultural significance of these subterranean structures requires us to look beyond their physical construction and into the ways they shaped human relationships, communal life, and the spiritual worldview of the people who built them. One of the most immediate cultural impacts of underground homes was their role in strengthening family and kinship bonds. Unlike isolated temporary shelters, pit houses, earth lodges, and other subterranean structures were designed to house multiple members of a family or even extended kin groups under a single roof. Living in close quarters during the long, harsh winter months required cooperation, patience, and shared responsibility. Tasks such as maintaining the fire, preparing food, repairing the structure, and tending to storage pits were communal activities. Each member of the household had a role, and the daily routines of survival fostered interdependence. Children learned not only the practical skills needed to survive, but also the importance of working together and contributing to the well-being of the family and community. These underground spaces also shaped social hierarchies and organization within tribes. Larger earth lodges often served as communal homes for several families and could reflect status and leadership structures within the group. Elders and leaders might occupy spaces closer to the central hearth, where the warmth was greatest and activities were coordinated. Younger families or less senior members often lived in peripheral areas, learning through observation and participation in communal life. This spatial arrangement reinforced social structures and provided a framework for education and mentorship. Elders taught children and adolescents the knowledge necessary for survival, hunting techniques, food preservation, fire management, weather prediction, medicinal plant usage, and spiritual customs. The underground home thus became a living classroom, where practical and cultural knowledge intertwined seamlessly. The hearth at the center of these structures was more than a source of warmth. It was a focal point for social and ceremonial activity. Around the fire, families gathered to eat, converse, and pass down stories from one generation to the next. Oral storytelling was a cornerstone of cultural preservation. Myths, legends, and historical accounts were shared to teach moral lessons, explain natural phenomena, or instill cultural values. Children, observing and participating in these gatherings, absorbed lessons not only through words, but through the social norms demonstrated in the family unit. The underground home provided the safety and comfort necessary for these traditions to flourish, even during months when the outside world was inhospitable. These structures also facilitated spiritual practices that were closely connected to the land and natural cycles. Many tribes held beliefs that the earth itself was sacred, and living beneath the surface symbolized a close relationship with the natural world. The soil that insulated their homes was not simply dirt, it was a living part of their environment, imbued with spiritual significance. Ceremonies and rituals often took place within these spaces, honoring the earth, the animals that provided sustenance, and the ancestors whose knowledge guided daily life. Some lodges or pit houses included designated areas for spiritual or ceremonial activities, underscoring the integration of culture and survival in a single space. The underground structure was thus both a physical and spiritual sanctuary. In addition to fostering family cohesion and spiritual practice, underground homes played a role in community cohesion. Villages were often built with clusters of pit houses or earth lodges, and their proximity facilitated communication, mutual aid, and shared defense. Tunnels or covered pathways between structures allowed residents to move safely from one home to another, even during blizzards or harsh weather. In this way, the underground architecture reinforced the social fabric of the community. Tasks such as food sharing, cooperative hunting, and winter defense became more manageable because people were living and working in close, interconnected spaces. These shared experiences strengthened trust, collective responsibility, and the sense of belonging that was essential for survival in extreme climates. Another cultural aspect of underground homes was their influence on cultural expression through interior design and decoration. Interior walls, mats, and storage areas were often decorated with symbols, patterns, and motifs that carried cultural meaning. These designs could reflect tribal identity, spiritual beliefs, or family heritage. They also served practical functions, such as distinguishing storage areas, denoting sleeping spaces, or marking ceremonial zones within the home. By embedding cultural expression into the very structure of the living space, Native Americans ensured that their homes were both functional and meaningful. The act of creating, maintaining, and decorating these homes was itself a cultural practice, connecting the practical work of survival with aesthetic and spiritual expression. Food preparation and storage, central elements of underground life, were also deeply tied to culture. Rootcellars and storage pits allowed families to maintain a diverse diet throughout the winter, and the act of preparing, preserving, and sharing food reinforced social bonds and cultural rituals. Meals were often communal, with each member contributing to cooking, serving, and cleaning. These daily routines were infused with cultural meaning. The timing of planting, harvesting, and storing food was linked to seasonal ceremonies, moon cycles, and spiritual beliefs. By combining survival and ritual, underground homes created a continuous link between practical life and cultural identity. Seasonal ceremonies and festivals were another crucial cultural component facilitated by underground living. During the long winter months when outdoor activity was limited, families used their subterranean homes to celebrate significant events, honor ancestors, or mark seasonal transitions. These gatherings reinforced social cohesion, taught younger generations about their cultural heritage, and provided psychological comfort during a time that could otherwise feel isolating and harsh. The underground environment created an intimate, protected space that allowed these cultural practices to thrive, reinforcing the idea that survival and culture were inseparable. Underground homes also provided educational opportunities. Children learned through direct participation in daily life and through observation of elders' practices. They watched how fires were maintained, how ventilation was managed, and how food was stored. They learned to track weather patterns, recognize edible plants beneath snow, and understand the behavior of animals in winter. Beyond practical survival skills, they absorbed lessons in morality, social responsibility, and the importance of cooperation. The underground home was a microcosm of the broader culture, teaching children the values, skills, and knowledge necessary to become competent members of the tribe. The communal aspects of underground living fostered conflict resolution and negotiation skills. Sharing a small enclosed space with multiple families or extended kin groups required compromise and cooperation. Disagreements over fire management, storage space, or sleeping arrangements had to be resolved quickly and amicably to ensure the safety and comfort of all residents. These interactions provided a form of social training, teaching negotiation, empathy, and collaborative problem-solving, skills that were invaluable for life outside the home as well. Some underground structures were used for ceremonial or political purposes, highlighting their broader societal role. Larger lodges could host meetings between leaders, discussions of communal policy, or ceremonial events that included multiple families or clans. The central hearth often served as the focal point for these gatherings, symbolizing unity and shared purpose. By accommodating both domestic and communal functions, underground homes blurred the line between private and public space, reflecting a cultural understanding that survival depended not only on individual effort, but on collective organization and cooperation. The design of underground homes also reflected regional cultural differences. Tribes in the northern plains, for example, favored large communal earth lodges that could withstand the intense cold and wind of the open plains, while plateau and northwest coast tribes used smaller sunken pit houses designed for mobility and efficiency in their specific environments. These regional adaptations highlight the interplay between cultural values, environmental pressures, and architectural innovation. Each tribe's underground systems were tailored not only to physical survival but also to the social and spiritual needs of the community. In addition to fostering cultural continuity, underground homes provided a psychological sense of security and stability. Winter could be an isolating and dangerous time, with snow-covered landscapes and limited daylight creating both physical and emotional challenges. The underground home offered a stable, safe environment where families could gather, plan, and maintain a sense of normalcy despite the harsh conditions outside. The consistent warmth, light from the hearth, and the presence of family and community members created an emotional refuge, reinforcing the mental resilience necessary to endure months of limited resources and extreme weather. The act of constructing underground homes was itself a cultural practice. Gathering materials, digging the site, reinforcing walls, layering insulation, and installing hearths required coordination, skill, and knowledge passed down through generations. Construction involved the entire community, with elders guiding, adults laboring, and children assisting and learning. The physical act of building was intertwined with cultural rituals, ensuring that the process of creating a home also reinforced social bonds, transmitted knowledge, and maintained connection to the land. Finally, underground homes and storage systems reflected an understanding of long-term sustainability and stewardship. The careful use of natural materials, the energy efficiency of earth insulation, and the preservation of food resources demonstrate a cultural ethos that valued balance with the environment. The design of these systems shows that survival was not merely about enduring the present, but planning for the future, ensuring that each generation could thrive without depleting resources. By embedding sustainability into daily life, underground homes became a cornerstone of both practical survival and cultural identity. In essence, the cultural significance of Native American underground systems is profound. They were not merely shelters, they were living centers of family, community, education, spiritual practice, and cultural continuity. The way these spaces were constructed, inhabited, and maintained demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of human needs, social dynamics, and environmental stewardship. They illustrate that survival, culture, and community are inseparable, and that even in the harshest conditions, human creativity and cooperation can transform the environment into a space of warmth, meaning, and life. By examining these underground structures, we gain a window into the values, priorities, and worldview of the people who built them. We see how architecture, daily life, spirituality, and social organization were seamlessly intertwined. The underground home was a place of learning, of ritual, of storytelling, of governance, and of human connection. It stands as a testament to the ability of culture to thrive even in the most challenging circumstances, demonstrating that survival is not only a physical endeavor, but a social, emotional, and spiritual one as well.